Hi guys, in this video I'll be sharing my top 5 mistakes that I have made so far in the farm for the period of 1 year. Some grave enough that they would have made us quit the business. And if you are new here and wondering who I am, my name is Joseph Mutugi, a senior software engineer and a part-time poultry farmer running a 1,000 layer farm with a projection of 3,000 layers by the end of the year. If this is the kind of content that you find interesting, kindly consider subscribing and giving us a thumbs up to get notified when we upload such content in the future. On top of the list of the mistakes that I have made is when we lost 30 chicks on one night. So this is what happened. So I was new to poultry business. I had done my research, I had done my learning online and also consulting other farmers. And I was comfortable enough to order my 500 layers starter flock. So once I received the chicks, the first mistake that I made is that I never confirmed that the chicks were 500 in numbers as I had booked. Second mistake is that we collected the chicks in the wee hours of the night and it was raining heavily. So we were not able to confirm the number of the birds that we had ordered to confirm that we received the same numbers as we had pre-booked. So we just picked the chicks, put them in the vehicle and went with them to the farm. In the farm, we had not preheated the brooder. And also, we had not set the feeds and also the drinkers. So we started on by preheating the brooder, setting up the jikos, setting up the water points, and also setting up the feeds. Once we opened the cartons, that's when we realized that one of the carton, which is partitioned into 4 segments, each segment with 25 chicks. So one of the segment was wet, and one of the birds was actually dead. The rest of the birds were all wet in one of the segments. So all these birds that were on this segment ended up dying because of cold. This almost made us quit. It was a very low moment, starting on a wrong foot. However, we overcame this problem, and in the next flock that we picked, we were keen enough to confirm the birds, the number of birds that we had picked, and their condition, that they are in good shape before we pick them from the supplier. That was a very low moment, but it taught us confirmation. It taught us vital lessons of confirming that we have picked the right birds and also validating the numbers. That was on top of the list. On the second mistakes that we made, it's on water. Water is a vital component for layers. So we had a smaller tank that served our layers, around 1,000 layers. So we had an issue with the county council water. So for like 1 month or so, water was unavailable. The capacity of our tank was so small, and it's also the same tank that is being used locally by the employees and also by my parents. So we had a water shortage. Worse enough is that there was there were very big rains. So we couldn't use vehicles or carts to go to the river to fetch water. So the only final alternative was to send people to the river to carry water with jerry cans. My birds currently consume more than 1,000 liters in a single day. So you can imagine carrying jerry cans or hiring employees to carry jerry cans for around 1,000, and the local water that is being consumed, let's average it to 1,500. It was chaotic, and it dug back the profits that we were making at that time. So lessons learned here is we bought a bigger tank, and the plans currently is to drill a well that can guarantee us clean and reliable water. So on water still, we when we had water shortages, we also tried to use water that hadn't been utilized for a very long time. So this water was not clean for the birds. After giving the birds for 2 days, we experienced reduction of eggs with almost 50%, and we couldn't figure out what the problem is. Because we were giving the same feeds, the birds were still active as normal. There was no signs of diseases in the farm. So that's when I instructed my employees to check the water that they are giving the birds, and for sure after changing the water source, the birds picked up immediately in the third day. But for the 2 days, we made losses. So lesson learned is that clean water is very important in your farm. Make sure that you have backup of clean water. Otherwise, you'll spend more money to fetch the water, like in my case. The third grave mistake that we made was in brooding. And this is not the first batch brooding, the second batch brooding. So on the weekend, on one of the weekends, I went to the farm to set up the brooder. So I organized the geckos, I organized the wood shavings, I organized the corner rounding cardboards. And something told me that I should also set up the lights. The problem is that I'm not an experienced electrician. So, and I was to extend the lights from one house to where the brooder was. So I went, switched off the electricity, the KPLC electricity at the consumer units, and started doing my extension. Once I completed the extension, I went, switched off the lights, and for sure, the bulb was on. What I didn't notice is that the bulb holder was naked. I was electrocuted. I almost vanished from the face of this life. No, it's not a laughing matter, but I made a very grave mistake of thinking that I could do it all. I was not a trained electrician, and this almost made me vanish from the face of this world. Mistake learned is that today, any professional matters doing with electricity, I always contract an electrician, except of course, lighting bulbs, that one I do myself. The fourth grave mistake is security. We never set up our CCTV cameras immediately we started operating the farm. So we had some theft in the farm, not necessarily on the chicks or on the layers, but within the farm compound. So of course, with this large number of birds, they usually attract thieves. So the right thing is setting up a good security systems like CCTV, having a watchman if you can, and also having people within the compound, security rights, and also dogs if you prefer. And if you want to go to the next level, you can do the perimeter walls and the electrical fences if you have large numbers that can support that. So we never did security CCTVs and lights early enough as we started the farm. So we had some breakages in the farm and we counted our losses. We then set up the security lights and CCTV in the farm to prevent further breakages. And the final mistake number 5 that we have made so far is not looking for market earlier enough. So as a new farmer, one of the biggest problems that you usually find yourself in is trying to learn how to manage the farm. So in this phase, you are overwhelmed by managing the farm and you forget that after the chicks get to the laying point, you need to sell those eggs. So the farm was being managed well. We got our layers to lay on time. In fact, the first egg we got was on week 18th. And this is the recommended week where layers should start laying. So we managed the farm very well. Once they started laying, of course, they start with very small eggs that you can't sell. So even at this point, we never considered looking for market until 1 week, around 3 weeks down the line, we had a pile up of eggs. This is when we realized that we should have looked for markets earlier. Luckily enough, contacted some of my good friends who operate retail shops around the city, and we were able to secure a good market for our eggs. So a good learning is that we should have started marketing our eggs earlier enough before we even got to the point of lay. This is some of the major mistakes that farmers make. So that's it for today. Kindly watch out for our next releases. Bye-bye.